You are tuning in to the Cigar Guys podcast, where aficionados and newcomers alike gather to explore the vast cigar universe. Meet your host, Alexander Gonzalez, Mark Nikollaj, his big little brother Zachary Nikollaj, and Jared Burrows. So sit back, light up, and let's get the conversation started.
Thank you guys for tuning into another episode of the Cigar Guys podcast. We are here back at Blend and Barrel in Sanford, Florida. We're going to be talking to Shiah Goldberg, who is now a part of the Blend and Barrel company. Thank you for having us on.
Yeah.
Having us here and doing the podcast here the morning after New Year's Eve. So I'm hungover. Zach's hungover. No, I'm kidding. But I'm here with Zach and Jared from the Cigar Guys podcast. Thank you guys for being here.
Anytime. Always happy to be here.
A little slow this morning, but it's okay. And we're smoking a gift that Shiah gave us. Tell us a little bit about what we're smoking right now.
That's Avo Heritage. One of the sleepers in the brand portfolio. Like we were talking before, specifically it was a gift because you guys, from what I know about you personally, you like to smoke great things. You have access to pretty much everything. And with the podcast, you're constantly having interesting people on with great brands. So rather than giving you something new and excited, I thought I would give you something that I was pretty sure you hadn't smoked or didn't remember. And they got to be between 8 and 10 years old in my personal storage.
That's very thoughtful.
That's awesome.
Thank you. Yeah. I mean, it's awesome. Right away, as soon as I smelled it, I'm like, I'm smoking this on the podcast.
Mm-hmm.
I couldn't wait.
It smells like, before you light it up, it smells like just straight chocolate. Nice chocolatey smell. And obviously it's going to be very smooth smoke throughout. You know, not too strong or anything like that. Yeah. And what are you smoking?
So I had also selected a cigar for today, which I didn't pay attention very clearly to. But this is a great second option. This is Alma de Campo from Plasencia. This is kind of my all day, any day, every day Plasencia. Flavorful enough where I could smoke it late at night and also soft enough to start the day.
Yeah.
So
very good choice. And Blend and Barrel, as you guys may have known from a previous episode, they carry the Besa cigar, which we have here. So if you're in the Central Florida area and you haven't been to Blend and Barrel yet, it is a great spot to go to. We come here quite a bit and we enjoy the Besa cigar here and a bunch of other stuff. We did an event recently here that did really well, but just come check this place out. Super great hangout spot. They got a full bar, the whole 9 yards. I mean, it's one of those places. And of course, Shiah is great. So if he's here, he takes care of business. Everything is, tip-top shape when he's running the show.
Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. That. So tell us, too, for the audience, a little bit about your background. I know you have extensive experience, so feel free to dive as deep as you want from, how you got into cigars and kind of, take us through your story, basically.
Sure. Yeah. I appreciate it.
Yeah.
I started smoking cigars at a very young age. Too young, legally. My first experience that got me into cigars was very interesting in that in high school, I was in a school where the first group of class, there was no senior class. So as a freshman, I ended up going to senior prom, speed through that. Long story short, everything for that night was taken care of by the upperclassmen. Hotels, booze, travel accommodations, so on and so forth. And for some reason at 15 years old, I thought that I needed to bring something that was not unusual. It was hospitality. But for whatever reason, I decided that cigars was the thing. I don't know if it was a perception of they're older. I mean, a 2-year difference obviously still doesn't make sense. But at a 15-year-old, you're kind of just throwing things against the wall. Long story short, I walked into a cigar shop, pretended like I knew what I was doing, pretended I was old enough to be there. And there was an old Cuban gentleman who we ended up becoming friends over the time I was in high school. And he let me do my thing and then walked up to me at the end of the counter after literally probably 15 minutes of just letting me sit there, probably hoping that I was going to leave the store. Looked at the selection, and I'll never forget this, pulled 2 cigars out of my selection and went to the wall and got 2 Fuente Hemingway signatures and looked at me and said, smoke this and it's going to make you sick. And then smoke it again the following day. And if you don't like it, cigars are not for you. It was also my first time drinking and my first hangover. It definitely made me sick that night. But sure enough, following morning, I smoked the second Fuente Hemingway, and I kind of fell in love with cigars. Fast forward through college, I studied business and finance and a bunch of other things, but I was always in the hospitality business while I was studying in school. And about 2010, I was bartending and managing at Houston's in Pompano Beach, and two friends of mine opened a like prohibition style speakeasy cocktail lounge. And they wanted to do just a kind of a standing cabinet cigar pairing menu. So because I had been smoking cigars for pretty much 10 years at that point, I helped them put together the pairing menu. Long story short, the bar did very well their first year. The cigar business did even better than anybody could have imagined. And they asked me to come in and partner with them and open up a standalone cigar shop next door to the lounge. So it really was a happy accident. I was 25. The cigar business we opened with a total budget of less than $40,000, including the construction.
And this is when? Like
2012.
Okay. Wow.
I did most of the build out of the gray space myself. And by the end of the first year, we did just under $500,000 in revenue. So on a $30,000, $40,000 investment, I'd say we did a pretty damn good job.
Yeah. Huge ROI. Yeah. Write this down.
Yeah, right.
But what really happened to me in that moment was I realized that as much as I enjoyed cigars, what I enjoyed as much, if not more, was helping people enjoy cigars. So it was at that moment that I kind of realized I wanted to learn all aspects of the business. So from that first shop, I went to work for two small boutique cigar companies on the sales side of the things. Started as a sales rep, ended up being VP of sales for one company and director of sales for another. Then I went back to wholesale and retail, worked at a couple different lounges. Fast forward again, Prime Cigar in Boca Raton, which I will say was probably one of the best lounge experiences that I had ever experienced as a consumer. I got an opportunity to work with that company for 4 years, helped to move their Brickell location, which was their second location, into the next era for them for cigars. And then in COVID in 2020, I left Empire Social and went to work for Davidoff for 2 years, which is where these three cigars came from.
Oh, yes. Awesome.
That was an incredible experience. Getting to see behind the curtain at Davidoff, I thought was going to be either a wonderful thing or a disappointing thing because of the prestige of the brand. And once I got to see behind the curtain, I was actually more impressed by the company than I was from an outside perspective.
That's awesome, yeah.
Which is a wonderful thing.
Yeah,
I mean, it's kind of like meeting your celebrity crush. You know what I mean? You don't know how it's going to go. And then after my time at Davidoff, I was doing some consulting in the business. I went back home to Boca Raton to take care of some family things. And Tom and I got reconnected from a mutual friend of ours who's a broker, Jeff Gruber. Tom is the principal owner here. Tom was a member of mine in Brickell. Great story. And briefly, he came in one day with another one of our members, loved what we were doing, loved the operation. He was there on another one of his business ventures and kind of walked in and it was pre-COVID, but very close to it. It was the afternoon. We were very slow. And he looked around. I kind of walked him through the place and he said, whatever your highest level of membership is, that's what I want. And became a lifetime member, sight unseen, first day. So when we got reconnected, he and I had a conversation. We hit it off brilliantly. The previous operator here had moved on to police academy. So Tom was in the need for somebody. And I was also really looking for a place where I could grow kind of the rest of my existence in the cigar lounge, in this lifestyle business. I love Tom dearly. As partners, we're very different people, which I think is also wonderful, but we have a very similar vision. So that's kind of the full circle, abbreviated, but not so abbreviated.
No, yeah. So, I mean, you've been pretty much on every side of the industry, which is great because the topic that we're going to be discussing today is what our predictions are going to be for the cigar industry 2025 and, kind of beyond. Whether that is our opinions on the retail side or, behind the scenes, how we kind of see things changing because the industry is rapidly changing in some ways. It's not as much of a strictly legacy kind of thing anymore. There's a lot of new brands every year that are coming out, kind of changing the game a little bit. media is becoming a big thing. So we'll kind of dive into that. But again, this is really good.
Yeah,
Really good cigar.
I'm glad you're enjoying it.
So I guess we'll start off with discussing where we kind of see things changing. So first of all, is there anything that comes to mind off the top of your head that's like, okay, I really see this aspect of cigars kind of shifting one way or another?
For sure. I think you spoke to it. I think that I see a pretty, and I guess it's always been there, but a more defined divide between legacy and longstanding, and what I would say is kind of the expected part of the business, and then also the up and coming. But more importantly, I mean, boutique cigars, or whatever the term is that they self-describe or we lay upon them, have always been there. But they're finding a way to engage new consumers in a different way that I think that we've seen in a long time. Excuse me. Let me just mute this.
No, you're good.
Yeah, I think one thing though about Florida is like we see the most of, these boutique cigars. Like we see the rise and fall in, of like, small companies I want to try out, and for one reason or another, it doesn't work out. Because I travel a lot, and if you go, to like New York or Atlanta sees it a lot too, but like Kansas or whatever, they don't even have like a boutique cigar selection. They have all the legacy cigars, the traditional, like,
Mainstream.
Yeah, mainstream cigar brands. And if you try to find a boutique cigar there, they're like, we don't have any boutique cigars. I don't even know what that is, So I think that's one thing great about being in Florida is because we could see what the trend is going to be like, especially now with social media and podcasts and, TikTok, shorts, everything that are advertising all these, newly branded cigars. It's pretty interesting. And then you go to a different cigar shop in, the middle of the US and you're like, oh man, this is nothing like home.
Yeah, that kind of makes sense too. Cause I mean, Florida is like essentially the cigar state capital. We have Tampa, obviously. Miami's huge. A lot of influence from Cuba, people that came here to start new factories and stuff like that. So it's almost as if it's all coming from, Central America up through Florida and then eventually to the rest of the country. And two, I mean, some of the places you go to, Zach, are maybe smaller towns or states that aren't as popular. So maybe they haven't been able to be exposed to a lot of these new brands yet. Yeah, you bring up a good point.
Yeah, I think in the marketplace for a long time, Florida is a good indicator of the predictive part of the marketplace. Like you said, because so much cigar stuff is here. But I've also always found that Texas is actually really the metric in which the business is measured. Dallas, San Antonio, even the Houston area, there's a lot of very long-term, long-standing family-owned retailers who will take a risk on a new brand, but they're also the first to kill it. So you have that kind of one shot of really doing it. I have always looked at Texas as the next version of what the Florida retail landscape looks like, because to your point, we have all the reps here. So the brands are here, so on and so forth. So if you run a cigar shop in the state of Florida, there's a good chance that you see 3 or 4 brand representatives a week. Yeah. And a lot of times they're people that you didn't even know existed until they walked in your door. I hope the future for the industry has a little more authenticity. And what I mean by that is I think future generations are now exposed to doing their own research, different types of research, databases of technology and so forth. And it seems as though the younger generations are trending more towards not just accepting what's given to them, but actually trying to be a little more critical and going after those things. And I would love to see that hit our business. More authentic storytelling, but also more importantly, more authentic processes. Really well fermented tobacco, really aged things. Getting rid of this whole, I can't tell you where the cigar is made or who or what's in it. You know what I mean? I think the mystique is great sometimes, but at the end of the day, it's an agricultural product that is really driven on passion and legacy. There's a lot of things that go into it. So I would love to see kind of a trend back towards authenticity.
Yeah.
It's kind of funny that, it's great that you bring that up because you're right. Over time, we've lost authenticity, not even just in the cigar. Like if you just look at the bar industry, right? we start going to cheaper drinks, not crafted cocktails. And more recently, I'd say within the last, or actually probably since COVID, maybe a year or two prior to COVID, we've started to see all these, speakeasy style bars. You sit down, they're crafting a cocktail in front of you. You know what whiskey, what bourbon is going to be in it. You know what kind of gin is going to be in it. And it's like you're learning more about the craftsmanship of, in that case, alcohol. But I could see that easily coming back over to cigars, and I think it'd be amazing. People remember what they like. Not just like, oh, I like 12 Fuente. Which one? Do you smoke a Maduro? Do you smoke a, whatever? And I could easily see that coming back. In a place like here, it's very easy for it to come back because it's very personable here. I walk in and you come up to me, what do you like to smoke? Oh, you like to smoke this that has this, this, and this in it. So let me show you something equivalent that I think you'd like. And, we just need more cigar places that, will spend the time to do that, to educate the consumer.
Yeah, I think it goes to whether it is like, for example, on the bar side or in the cigar side, retailers and people that work in the lounge that are passionate about cigars, people that, like you said, people are starting to look more into what they are smoking, what brand is using what tobacco. We see a lot of people that are sending us feedback that are saying, they want to learn more about this brand or they want to learn more about the process. And people that come in here, they're starting to be more hungry for the information as opposed to just, hey, like, give me something good. And then they smoke that one cigar and then they kind of stick with that cigar. Maybe they branch out here and there. But yeah, we're seeing a lot more consumers searching for that information. And I think that there are people on the manufacturing side that are also, kind of buying into the whole what makes them unique as opposed to just, marketing and stuff like that. I think the way the industry is going, brands have to express what makes them unique. First of all, find out what makes them unique. And if they don't have something that's unique about them, a lot of brands are now trying to create that. Right. Like what's unique about our cigar? And for example, like the way that Alfonso blends his cigars for selected tobacco, very unique process that no one else does. That's like one example of how he differentiates himself from everyone else.
Yeah, I'm glad you brought that up. Specifically with that brand, it's so nice to see somebody who came from, like we were talking about, both sides of the business, meaning Cuban old world and new world cigar production, and coming to and a new company. I mean, it's still technically a new company, but to have penetrated the market at really the highest level, and so frequently, I guess not frequently, but in the realm of things, a lot of times when you see people who are going after the luxury or the lifestyle side of the business, that's actually more of the false storytelling or the narrative driving. And with Select, not only their tobacco unbelievable, the blends are phenomenal. The quality control is as good as basically everybody in the business, but it's real. Mm-hmm. And it's nice to see. It's very refreshing. Yeah. I completely agree.
And you're right. The United Cigars has been around for so long, like hundreds of years, almost 100 years. But Selected Tobacco, for example, which is one branch of United Cigars, there's still people that have no idea about the brand. There's people, we've been to events with them, there's people that are still finding out about these super high-end luxury cigars. And people that are willing to take the risk on them usually are very pleased with those cigars. But yeah, I think having to move into a more authentic side of this industry is definitely becoming more necessary. Because for the longest time, it's been, 90% legacy cigars that you find in the shop, your usual stuff. So now that the options are becoming more and more, there's so much more competition now. And all these newer brands, even some that are larger brands, but are still so new in terms of, the grand scheme of things, they are driving innovation, so to say. whether it is, how they market it or what they put in the cigars or some special process that they utilize for their product or distribution or whatever it is. We're seeing a lot more of that. And because too, someone told us this, I'm not sure entirely how much truth is it, but they said that there's about 300 new cigar brands that are conceived every year, which is insane. And obviously we're never going to see, 95% of those.
Right.
But the fact that this industry right now is very accessible to get into, I think people may have not realized that until more recently. But since it is, in a way, very easily accessible, there's a lot of people that are trying to get into it now. So I think the competition is kind of growing.
Yeah, I mean,
overall,
the thing about it may be easily accessible, but even if you have, people that just want to throw money at it, that's at 95%, right?
Right.
That they're just going to throw money at it because, someone told them cigar business is easy, you could do it, but the product isn't going to be there. Just like restaurants, anyone could go out, get a loan and open up a restaurant. But at the end of the day, if you don't have the recipes or the culture, to make this food or make the experience great, it's not going to work out. So it's the cigar industry, in compared to that, is relatively cheap to start, but to make a quality product, to learn about the advertising portion of it, to actually put, manpower down to get your cigar out there, that's where it gets real expensive.
And I think that goes back to authenticity too. You could have someone that likes cigars maybe and has a lot of money and says, I want to start my own brand, throws money at it, creates a brand, but isn't really maybe passionate about it or knowledgeable about it enough to take it to the next level. So that could be an example of, a brand that might easily start and die. But authenticity and, being real is going to help separate the winners from the losers, so to say.
Yeah. I think both excellent. I think the restaurant industry is a great parallel for the cigar business. The 80-90% failure rate is probably true in our industry as much as it is the restaurant business.
Yeah.
It's also one of those things that if you really don't love it, it's gonna be hell. Probably one of the best examples of that for me is Rocky Patel. You look at someone who achieved tremendous success in legal and then became a road warrior for the better part of 15 years. There's an adage that I heard, and I wish I could remember who to attribute it to, where it's the best way to make $1 million in the cigar business is to spend 10. And everything about this game is slow. From the seedling to even going back from the agronomy. Yeah. 6 or 7 generations of planting seeds just to get a strong enough genetic thing to actually produce tobacco that you could use. Every time I've ever seen somebody try and cheat that curve, it's the beginning of their own undoing.
Yeah.
So I think the authenticity is also being real with yourself. I'm approaching almost 20 years in the business, and I'm fortunate in that I still have the ability to kind of step away and look at what am I doing that can be improved? What am I doing that is regressive? But I think to your point, we don't really talk about this in the business, but COVID to now was essentially the cigar boom of the 90s, mid 90s all over again. The first one we can almost very clearly attribute to pop culture and cigar aficionado and what that meant for us as a business. 2020 to now was essentially COVID in 2 forms. Very inexpensive, if not free capital on the retail side and the business side. And also people with a lot of time and a lot of the things that they did to enjoy themselves and to de-stress were taken away from them. So that boom period where the 300 brands are coming into existence every year, I believe over the next 3 to 5 years, we're going to see a real constriction in the marketplace. And my hope through that is the people who are really dedicated, the people who are really delivering value to the consumer and to the cigar culture, and the ones who understand that this is a 30, 40, 50-year pathway to success, not 5. That's what we're left with. In which case, if that happens, and there's a lot of balls that have to align for that to be the case, but if that does happen, I think we'll be in one of the best positions we've ever been in from a consumer marketplace and a business side.
No, absolutely. And you're right. I mean, everyone that you talk to in this industry that's been successful can tell you some sort of story about how long it took. And even some people that didn't have patience in the beginning, but quickly realized that it is going to take a long time. I mean, some of these brands that are just getting really big now, people don't realize that they actually might be 10 or 20 years old and have just now reached like that point where they're in Cigar Aficionado or in all these big magazines and stuff like that. So it is definitely a you're in it for the long haul. And a lot of people that we've talked to, big names in the industry, when they find out we started a cigar, is usually their reaction is either like, you know, oh, that's like, that's pretty crazy, like almost like proud of you. And the other half is like, what are you doing? Like, are you sure you want to go down this road? Because it is a long process. I mean, it's years and years. It's not like you said, if someone thinks they're going to make $1 million in 2 or 3 years, it's not going to happen.
Right.
Unless they spend
Yeah.
$10 million.
Right.
To
Spend
start
5 to 10.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah. Because I mean, even we saw a cigar brand that came up after we started and just dumped a lot of money into it. Went basically all the places that we went to, we sold our cigars. And I think a year and a half, it was gone.
Maybe. And part of the issue too was the product itself was not good. Like I can confidently say it was just not good at all. Marketing, great. I mean, branding, it was beautiful. But the actual cigar itself, not good at all.
Yeah.
And that's like the biggest part of a cigar. If you can't enjoy it, it could look beautiful. But if it's not good, no one's going to smoke it.
Yeah.
I mean,
the boxes were fantastic.
Yeah.
They were beautiful. I mean, the craftsmanship on them, I was jealous. But the
Great
product,
branding, great packaging will sell the cigar the first time. But
exactly.
that's about it.
Yeah.
Well, I think too, at least for one example, I think they gave boxes to some of these retailers, but they didn't even put them on the shelves because they were that bad. So I'm not sure what's going on with that, but again, another example of, if you don't have the knowledge or the drive or the passion for it, that's already kind of a bad stepping stone to start with.
So in this situation, would you suggest that they rebrand and move on and fix the taste issue or whatever the issue is? Because if the branding is already there, the marketing is already there, is it just a flavor thing?
Well,
or is it more or less like they're giving up and not going to try again?
I think in this particular example, it's still so new that
to divert now,
they could easily step back and say, let's find a better product and keep the marketing and the branding. And they can go to, because I mean, they really only went to like, I don't know, maybe 10, 20 shops, which is nothing. So if they could fix the product and go elsewhere and have the success elsewhere, they could always come back later on to those same places.
Then kind of rebuilding that first impression, so to speak.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, if it's a brand that has been, the vice versa, in my opinion, is a brand that was doing really good and has widespread success, but then cheaped out on their product afterwards. That's how you kill a brand right there.
Yeah.
Because once you cheap out, it's like you're ruining that reputation that you did have initially. In my opinion.
Yeah, I would say the same for the most part. I think if you establish name recognition, whether it's good or bad, you always have the opportunity to deliver something that's incredible or even just great and capture people's attention, especially the critics. If people have aligned with negative experiences with something and you're able to give them an opportunity to maybe under their perception slam you again, but they just can't because it's awesome. I think if you've established that brand and that name recognition, even if it's in a negative sense with initial impact, it's easier to overcome than if you're a long-standing legacy that has waned over the years. I think usually when you have a loyal customer base that's disappointed versus a first-time customer that's disappointed, the second time it's much easier to recapture.
Yeah. No, I agree. Oh, what is this? Ooh. 1 second, guys. Sorry.
I will say, it's not to change the subject at all, but I like coming here because you're right next to the water. Sitting outside, like it's a beautiful day today, and just watching the water, feeling the wind. I mean, you can't beat it. To be honest with you, because sometimes you get trapped in some cigar lounges, have no scenery or anything, and like it's nice, but you gotta switch it up a little bit. You gotta enjoy nature, especially while you're smoking a cigar.
Yeah, well said. Yeah, I think that's another part of the innovation. You're seeing more of that now. People opening lounges that are not that. And this is not to take away anything from that. I mean, but people are starting to move into more well-lit, more lively, not necessarily the party atmosphere. I've never really understood that personally for me in a cigar lounge, but just more new, fresh. You're seeing younger operators who are bringing in more of that kind of experiential. But I'm with you. I mean, when I left South Florida to come here, I thought the hardest thing for me on earth would have been leaving the ocean behind. It's pretty much how I lived my whole life. And coming to work every day and looking at the lake is a blessing.
Yeah, I mean, just like that modern elegance. I mean, we're seeing it a lot now, with back to restaurants, but with a lot of like cocktail restaurants and stuff like that. And I feel like that is starting to make its way into the cigar industry. And yeah, I love it because it still feels relaxing, calming, comfy, but then you have that modern touch to it. Can't beat it. I mean, you can't beat the old school feel too.
Completely agree.
Yeah, like what was that cigar place we went to in New York? My cousin took us to.
Soho.
No, not the Soho was nice too.
Oh, it's the Carnegie Hall, I think. The library one.
Yeah.
I think it's called Carnegie
Club.
Carnegie Club. Yeah.
Nice.
Have you been there?
Yes.
That's a good example of like really old school.
Yeah. Quintessential cigar lounge from classic era.
Yes.
Yeah. But it's so well kept up too. That's the thing. We walked in there and like it didn't feel old. It didn't smell old. It just like it almost just felt nostalgic, and like you felt like how they would back then when they opened probably 100 years ago now. But
yeah, and they do it right. I mean, they have like everyone dressed up in suits, all the servers and the staff. But yeah, I think the big issue is you can still go old school, but like maintain it as if it is still a new business, so to say.
Yeah.
I think some of the businesses out there that are old school is simply just they didn't change anything really, and they've kind of stayed in there.
Yeah, stuff is worn down.
Yeah.
It's like it looks old.
Right.
Like it doesn't feel old. It looks old. So but like worn down old.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, like when I was in Indianapolis, St. Elmo's Steakhouse. I guess it's some famous steakhouse over there. That place, they kept it like well kept, and they had a speakeasy upstairs that I told the server, I'm like, I just wish we could smoke cigars up here because I would be here every day because I was there on a work trip. So, I was just walking over there, having a cocktail and then going back to the hotel. But it was right next to the Rocky Patel Lounge down there.
Okay. Yeah, the difference between timeless and classic versus old.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's a good way to put it.
And the Rocky Patel Lounge over there was very much like that club atmosphere. And I wasn't expecting that. Right away you walk in, bar, DJ, lights everywhere. They had an upstairs VIP area, which is really nice. And the manager over there, Josh, really cool guy. He walked me up. I was hanging out with him. We're talking a lot. But I wasn't. That was like the first real like club atmosphere cigar shop I went to, and it did catch me off guard initially.
Did they do it right? At least, like, do you think that that's successful for them, or yeah?
So I like the way they did it because it's overwhelming at first. Because right when you walk in, you see a bar, you see people standing, whatever. But they have like different sections. So if you go to the left, it's more of like a relaxed feel. You have that modern elegance there. So you could just sit down and enjoy your cigar. If you go to the right, they actually have like sit down tables because I'm pretty sure they served food as well. but I think they cut it off like kind of early. And then upstairs was like your traditional, cigar shop, basically. You had a balcony that you could overlook everyone. It was really nice. Yeah, they did it well. It was overwhelming at first, but
because the Burn Rocky Patel Lounge I went to was in I think Oklahoma City.
They definitely have a location.
Yeah, I think Oklahoma City, and that one's just a really nice, like, modern cigar lounge. So that one wasn't like it didn't feel like a club or anything. But I'm sure that's because of the demographics and like the location. It probably works really well there.
Yeah.
It wouldn't work in like Oklahoma City.
Definitely, because if there wasn't a lot of music DJs, whatever over there, because they had live music some nights, and then an actual DJ there too that supported the live music, then yeah, it would just be like a modern, elegant cigar lounge, just with a large it had a large circle bar in the middle. But it does have to do with demographic, because that's a lot of where they're at. It's like, I don't want to say it's a party town, but a lot of people go out over there and they want to go to a place like that. That's club-ish, but not like, packed. You're not trying to fish through people. You know what I mean?
Yeah. I think that's another thing too, is knowing and accepting the demographic that you have, because some different types of lounges or cigar retailers do better in different demographics. Obviously, I'm sure that when you're working in South Florida, a lot of the lounges there can get away with a more like club or party vibe and atmosphere than just like somewhere in the greater Orlando area. Like here, that might not be the best option, but I'm sure there's a lot of great places in South Florida where that does work.
Yeah, absolutely. I think knowing your customer and catering and servicing your clientele versus your own, maybe not the best word, but egotistical, self-centered version of what you want it to be.
Right. Yes.
I think there's a nice balance between the two. And to your point, yeah, I mean, Empire Social, when I ran in Brickell, it was in the heart of the nightlife of downtown Miami. And Miami's nightlife is, in my opinion, really different from everywhere else in the United States. So you have to adjust to that.
Mm-hmm.
I think there's a very fine line between cigar thing and nightlife thing that has cigars. And the better that you are at measuring that and either deciding. I mean, I think that there's plenty of places that are incredibly successful as bars that offer cigars.
Right.
But for a purist, personally, I will feel, and I think a lot of people will agree with me, you walk in and you may really enjoy yourself, but you walk away saying that wasn't really a cigar lounge.
Right.
Not good, bad, or indifferent. It is what it is.
Well, we've said that before too. It's like, it's great, but it's not a cigar lounge. Because in my opinion, yeah, when you want to go to a cigar lounge, you're expecting, kind of like Zach said, that relaxation kind of vibe. You go in and you can still have fun, but we're sitting down like this. We have some drinks, whatever. It's not loud. It's not, no one's being obnoxious. There's usually not people that are overly drunk and falling all over the place. That's kind of what you expect from a cigar lounge. Just low key, very relaxed, social, but not crazy.
Yeah, you're expecting a classy drunk.
Right.
I think it's so important now, especially because the art of conversation and the ability to hold a conversation is so lost that I believe that we are one of those preserved spaces in a social, in a nightlife, where conversation really is kind of the driving force, whether it's the conversation that you're having with the tobacconist in the humidor or the group of people that you're with in the lounge. There's so few places, and we are now so kind of captured and distracted by the digital world era that it's nice to see that our industry is really holding on to that conversation space.
Yeah.
So I think that's also, I will say, and kind of expose myself, that's my bias, is if I walk into a place where I can't hold a conversation with the people that I'm with and it's cigar centric, I may enjoy myself, but I probably won't return unless that's what I want.
Yeah.
Let's go enjoy a cigar and party at the same time, which is really not my inkling.
No, that's a great point, because I think, and I agree, when you go to 90% of cigar lounges, it's a place you can go to, and everyone's gonna be nice to you, want to talk to you for the most part. Everyone's holding conversation. It's one of those places where you don't have to go and like have a drink or get drunk to socialize. Whereas the opposite is, you go to a lot of clubs nowadays and it's like no one wants to talk. They just want to like drink as much as they can, so that way they can feel comfortable like dancing with someone or like kind of talking to someone. But if you go into a club sober, or even like after one or two drinks, it's like, what am I doing here? Like everyone's just kind of like, it's almost like a bunch of like wallflowers put in the same room, where they like want to have fun, but they really don't know how to anymore. And I think that, the phones are part of the problem with that. We have our generation, unfortunately, a lot of people sit at home behind the screen, texting or talking on social media, but then they go out and it's like, what do I do? And if they don't have, 6 or 7 drinks in them, they almost can't function like a normal person.
Yeah, the social anxiety effect. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, I mean, to be honest with you, that's kind of why, like, when people ask why'd you start a cigar business or how'd you start smoking cigars, my first response is the people. I could go to any cigar lounge, in the world basically, and I'm going to meet a friend over there.
Mm-hmm.
We have something that we bond over, cigars. Oh, what do you like to smoke? I like to smoke this, this, and this. What do you? And then he's like, oh, well, I have a cigar that I think you would like. And then automatically they just, they give you a cigar. And that goes back to the hospitality of it, where I think people who smoke cigars, go out to these lounges, they're friendly people and they want to expand your knowledge just as much as, you want them to expand your own.
Mm-hmm.
And it's just fascinating to me. I've met so many people that have just like, you smoke cigars? You have a cigar business? Wow. All right. Let me give you some cigars, and for no reason other than we both like cigars. And then of course, I'd give them the Besa, and then, next thing you know, we're friends. And, I've met coworkers like that. If we travel the same area, we're just automatically, hey, like when I was in Hawaii, did you try this Hawaiian cigar yet? I'm like, no. So he's like, I'll bring you one tomorrow. I'm like, okay. And then I gave him a cigar too. Just a constant trade-off. It's amazing.
Yeah.
Just the people in here are amazing.
And like you said too, you can even go to a lounge in a different country and you don't speak the same language. You walk in, that person is going to treat you better than most people here in America will, because they have that passion for it and they want you to have a good experience there. They genuinely care. So I've met plenty of people overseas that were, super kind, super nice people, exchange cigars, and, you make new friends that way. This is definitely one of the few places left where you can go into and make a new friend, like right off the bat, which I think is great.
We've said this a few times on the podcast, like the cigars like great equalizer. I mean, that's how I met Zach and Alex, and we started coming here, and that's how we met you. Now we're on the podcast together. It's just, you just keep branching out, keep networking. It never stops.
Yeah, absolutely. It's to all your points. It's the reason that I fell in love with this business first and foremost. I mean, I could have smoked cigars for the rest of my life, but once I got to understand the business and experience all aspects of it, I mean, what we're talking about now is as true, if not more true, when you're in Dominican Republic, Honduras, Nicaragua, at the factory level, and you see people who are creating the product who actually exhibit these same traits. They just want to share the thing that they do. They're happy to see you. They'll take the time out of a fairly rigorous production schedule to show you what they're going through and share that with you. I mean, we have become in the States, I guess, maybe globally, but we have become such a kind of closed off, compartmentalized society. And to see from seed to smoke, so to speak, every single layer of this business is about sharing in moments and experiences. It's also an equalizer for sure, but for me, it's an equally great filter. Almost rarely will you walk into a well-run cigar establishment and not have a wonderful experience, because usually the people who are there for the wrong reasons or whatever the case may be are naturally, they remove themselves from the setting.
Yeah.
It's a wonderful thing.
No, I mean, that's very true. And like you said, if when we've kind of been talking about this the whole time, if you're not passionate about it, you won't last, whether you're working it or just a hobbyist. I mean, and that's why on every level, whether it's in the factories or in the shops, people are willing to take time out of their schedule to talk to you and like, either educate you or just have conversation about cigars. And you don't really see that in many other industries, especially in America. A lot of industries are, let's do the job, let's work. And then like they go to their friends outside of work and that's where their social life is. Here, it's like everybody's friends, on all sides of the industry.
Yeah, I mean, you guys are a perfect example of that, right? All three of you come from different backgrounds, but you had a very common passion. And to your point, that's how you connected. And then something comes from it. And I can venture to say this is probably something that you will do for a very long period of time, if not forever. And I mean, it's the love keeps you here.
Yeah, Matt Booth did tell us that we have now sold our souls to the cigar industry. So I think we might be in it for a very long time.
Yeah. Perpetually, he will always say it better than I could.
Yes. Yeah. he has such a great way of wording things. But and two, continuing with the trends that we're seeing, I think we all will have the same answer, or at least a similar answer of where we see the trend going as far as consumership. I think we can all agree that it's going up right now. The question is, how much do you see it going up in 2025? In your opinion?
I think for me, the two most fulfilling and optimistic things I see is a growth in younger people enjoying cigars and female cigar smokers. I think that will continue to grow and potentially offset the average. I think in general, we will consistently see more and more people enjoying cigars because I believe that we are experiencing a consumer trend towards experiences and authenticity in general. I do, however, feel that, like I said earlier, we're on the plateau and probably a little bit of a decline from a unit basis, purely because of the COVID boom. But I believe that most of what we will see in that constriction is the people who were chasing a quick buck or a thrill or whatever are the ones that will kind of fade away and will end up with a bigger, stronger industry of more quality. Some of that is hope, but I think a lot of it is also real objective observation. But I truly believe that for one of the first times in my career and experience, between things like this podcasts and the digital marketing space and the conversation space, people are getting more access. It used to be, and I experienced this for the first 15 years that I smoked cigars. I would walk into a cigar shop and most people looked at me as if there was no reason for me to be there. I mean, it was very much an old man's club.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
It's kind of what drove me and how I run the business is I don't ever want anybody to come in here and have those experiences that I had. Now, it was great for me because I had to learn on my own and I had some great mentors along the way. But now with, access to digital information, great companies who are putting out real tangible intelligence about the process. And then, the dozens, if not hundreds of valuable podcasters who are adding their own narrative to it, it's become more accessible. But I also think that it's reaching, for the first time in a long time, a new audience. It used to be that cigar smokers were kind of cigar smokers because either their father or their grandfather or somebody it was a reminiscent thing. And now with the information that's out there, people are more interested in the process, that the experience, and they're captivated by it. Mm-hmm. So it gives us an opportunity to reach people like we haven't really done in a long time. Print magazines are a perfect example. It's a waning consumer base. I don't know the last time I picked up a magazine, pure honesty. I'll flip through it from a business perspective, but if I pull myself from the cigar industry, if I'm going to grab a magazine at an airport, it's probably never going to happen, right. Unless it's cigar related.
Right. But even too, the magazines really aren't effective in gaining new cigar smokers. Because if you're not a cigar smoker, there's no reason for you to pick up that magazine. You'll pick up something else that is more geared towards what your hobbies are. But yeah, that's never really been a thing for gaining new cigar smokers. It's for the people that are already in it,
Right.
But even then, like you said, that's kind of dwindling quite a bit. Like, I'd really don't read the magazines ever unless it's for, like, well, even online, I'll go like to Cigar Aficionado online to see like what their top 25 was this year, for research purposes. The magazines look great. They're great for decoration. So I do use them for decoration, but I never would actually read one of the magazines just, because it's not what I want to do.
Right. And it's weird because I will absolutely read a blog.
Yeah.
They're not that different.
Right.
But it's just something about that mental transition between old habits and a new thing, even though blogs are obviously not new at this point in time.
But I think it's part of the reason too, like we said, is now we're in the digital age where everything is super accessible on our phone and attention spans have gone down quite a bit. So opening the magazine for a lot of people is almost like, this is too much for me. I just want to find what I want to learn, whether it's a 60-second video or a quick blog that I can read. Because Google, you just go find exactly what you need. You don't really need to search for it or hope you come across it, in print.
That's a great point too. Great point.
And two, back to something you said a few minutes ago, I've experienced walking into a cigar lounge a few times and having like all eyes on you, almost in like a judgmental way where it's like, what is this young guy doing here? It's a bunch of like, old guys that probably go there every day. It's the same people. And then you walk in and it's like, everyone goes silent. They're kind of like, what is this guy doing here? Usually not in Florida. That's usually in like, small towns in other states and stuff like that, where they have a more
insulated.
Yes, insulated, demographics and people that go there.
Yeah, that actually happened to me once where I walked in and they were like, "What are you doing here?" They didn't explicitly say it, but I sat down, the only chair that was left. And I'm like, is anyone sitting here? They're like, no, it's open. I'm like, okay. Smoking and like, they're all talking to each other, excluding me.
Mm-hmm.
I stayed there for one cigar and I went to a cigar shop that was literally across the street. And the owner happened to be there. And right away, he brings me in the back and he's like, oh, it was in Kansas City. And he's like, have you tried any Kansas City whiskey yet? And I'm like, no. He's like, oh yeah, let me bring it out. And he brought out 4 bottles. He's like, which one do you want? I'm like, I don't know. I'll take, they had a bourbon. So I took the bourbon. He's like, all right, after the bourbon, you got to try the rye, just immediately, puts me in the conversation, invites me to the event because I was there during the Super Bowl. He's like, come back for a Super Bowl event, and they were right across the street from each other. I just thought, the dynamic change was so crazy to me, going from one place that, kind of shunned out new people to a place that just widely accepted it. And they were so close together.
How was the bar tab after that night?
And nothing. They didn't let me pay for anything.
Wow.
Yeah. Nice. No, he took care of me the whole night.
Nice.
I mean, I paid for my cigar, and then of course I left with, probably about, I bought 7 cigars. Yeah, from them. Because they were doing a special. Buy 7, you get 1 free. So I'm like, I'll do 7. But yeah, no, as far as like liquors related, didn't charge me a penny. And then, of course I went back during Super Bowl too, so I spent money then. But
I think kind of going back to how the people in the industry run their business is a lot of times they are willing to give a little bit, knowing that if you have a good experience coming to my business, you'll come back and, obviously keep spending money, buying cigars or liquor or whatever it is. I think there's a lot of people in the industry that almost just naturally, give you something because, again, it's about the passion. It's about enjoying it. I like you as a person. So here's a cigar that I really enjoy, try this one. And it creates that community of like-minded people that enjoy each other's company. So, and again, back to the experience. People that have a great experience are always going to come back.
Yeah. I mean, one of the things that on my consulting side of the business, one of the things that so few people really are even aware of and definitely pay attention to as operators in cigar shops and cigar lounges is the fact that 80% of our marketplace is online. And a lot of that is controlled by like 4 sites. So if you are not engaging on the experiential side of the business and exceeding customer service expectations, you become almost a test kitchen for website consumers. So they'll come in and try a couple cigars from you. And if you're the only place locally and you don't really offer much, but like the old school transactional guy sitting behind the cash register, doesn't even really say hello. You know what I mean? You just go in and grab your stuff. Like, you're going to go there because there's something that you want to try that they may have, but your ongoing business is going to go back to where most of the business is. And the opposite of that, when you desire to, and when you execute an experiential experience and that kind of personal relationship, people are willing to actually spend more than they would online to support the business, to be part of this community and this culture that we create. And while all of us generally in the business are intimately aware of where our local competition is, that's not really the game. I mean, local competition is something that we should really be supporting individually, and then looking at where our real competition is, which is in the digital space.
All right, I gotta head out.
All right.
You want me to stop it right now? Or just keep it recording?
No, I'll keep going for a bit.
Have a great trip.
Thank you so much.
Everyone wish Zach a safe trip to Croatia.
I say flight. See you soon.
Thank you.
See you, brother.
I'll see you guys tomorrow. See you guys later.
Travel well.
Go see the vlog. Those mine.
Yes. Here you go.
I'll switch.
And two, like you were saying about online. And just, I mean, not just the cigar industry in general. For example, let's put it this way. I don't like shopping. I prefer to order things online, have them sent to my house, so not waste time. I can do other stuff. And cigars, it would be the same for me if it weren't for the social experience that I can have coming to a lounge. So like you said, if we didn't have that, there's really no reason to go in person and buy cigars. Maybe if you, like you said, see what they have, test some stuff out, then I can buy in bulk online. But because we have the experience aspect of it, people want to continue to come back and enjoy themselves. Otherwise, it's like, why don't I just order cigars online, sometimes even for cheaper, and just smoke at home, maybe with myself, or I'd invite Jared over. We could just do that, and not waste time. But because of the experience that we have here, we always want to come back, hang out with you, hang out with the regulars or new people, have a couple of drinks, whatever it is. So I think that is definitely a huge part of the industry that keeps the retailers alive.
Yeah. And to take it back to what you were saying as far as trends, that's what I see is probably the most impactful change in the coming decade, is because we saw in the last 5 years a lot of new and especially younger operators investing into the retail side of the business and the lounge side of the business. They're approaching it from that perspective, in that they were a consumer that buys, their clothing, their shoes, whatever the case may be, online. And they're very well aware of the convenience aspect, sometimes the price. Now, and the reason I say sometimes is depending on where you're buying your cigars in a digital space, a lot of times what you're getting is under conditioned, poor, lesser quality product. 60,000 square foot warehouse with product. Sometimes the cigars are great, but a lot of times there's no way that they can be well kept.
Do you feel more comfortable buying your cigars in person, like boxes sometimes?
Yes.
Until you get more comfortable?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Also, Cubans, I think, is the best example for this. For me, I don't want to buy something that I have to then do the work for. So if I have to either continue to age the cigars until they're smokable and enjoyable, or recondition a product that I expected somebody to care about at least as much as I do. Whereas if I walk into a cigar shop, and usually for me, within the first 2.5 minutes, I know whether or not I'm going to buy quantity or boxes from a place based on how clean it is, how they're engaging, and all the rest of the other things. It's kind of a reflection of the humidor. In the restaurant business, we used to always say, you walk into a bathroom before you sit down at the table and you'll pretty much know what the dinner experience is going to be like. I feel like that is this kind of, in the same sense, you could walk into the restroom, of course, but also in your first 1.5 minutes in the lounge, you kind of have an idea for how well that they care.
Yeah.
And if I'm going to make a large scale purchase, the last thing that I want to do is walk out of a place with a box or an assembly of cigars that I'm not sure whether or not they're ready to smoke. And in the digital space, unless you're buying from a brick and mortar retailer that also has a website, there's really no way to know until it's too late.
Yeah, that's a very good point, especially with the warehouses. I mean, we've seen them there. It's basically a storage facility full of cigars, and a lot of them can go untouched or unnoticed, unmanaged for a long period of time if that company is not on top of it. So yeah, I mean, we've heard stories all the time too, like, oh, we found this box from 10 years ago that was missing. And as long as it is still in good condition, then it's great. But sometimes you could run into that situation where it was lost and it wasn't properly kept. So now it's just basically a lost product.
Right.
Or maybe they'll sell it for really cheap to get rid of it, and hope that the consumer says, "Well, I paid like cents on the dollar for this cigar, so it's okay." But yeah, I mean, and you bring up a great point too. Like, if you've been in the cigar hobby long enough, you can pick up on these things where you go into a retail location, and right off the bat, you'll know kind of what your experience is going to be, whether it's with the product or just your experience hanging out there. So I think people now are paying more attention to that and saying, okay, let's make sure we keep the place nice and clean. Like, let's make sure our staff is, friendly, at the very least doing their job and doing a great job. So that way we can keep people coming back and enjoying their time here.
I think this kind of goes back to like when we talked about before, where are you going to look at online or are you going to look at a magazine? For me, like 99% of the time when I try a cigar or hear about a new cigar lounge in the area, it's a real friend, right? I mean, it's word of mouth, like
a recommendation.
Yeah, recommendation almost every single time. Especially if a friend of mine has tried a cigar or went to a cigar lounge, had a good experience, then that's more likely that I'll go try that cigar lounge. Mm-hmm. But 100% of the time, I'll definitely try a cigar.
Yeah.
And then if I go back, that's based on what I feel.
But even too, with cigars, a lot of times the new cigars that you've smoked have been recommendations also. And, when you are able to go to a place where the people that work there, if you can trust them for a good recommendation, they'll give you an honest recommendation, that's great too. There's certain lounges that I've been to where I know that this one specific person isn't going to try and sell me. He's going to tell me what he genuinely enjoys. So that cuts out the risk factor of like, okay, I don't know if I'm going to like the cigar or not. But if I know his palate and I know that he's going to tell me honestly if it's good or not, that's great too.
That's one of the things that I preach here all the time with our staff is it's almost inconsequential or insignificant what we as individuals enjoy. Your job is to, through conversation and intelligent questions, figure out what the person who's standing in front of you is looking for. Mm-hmm. From a personal experience, when I walk into a humidor and wherever I may be, and the person that I'm talking to starts to tell me about their favorite cigars, it's wonderful. We can have that conversation when I'm sitting down and enjoying a cigar. But when I'm trying to select a cigar, not to be harsh, but I really don't care about what you like.
Right.
And that's something that has evolved with me over the years. But I'm actively coaching and encouraging here is one of the best things that I think that we can do is in these experiences is say to somebody as we're going through in the process, you probably won't enjoy that. Because you now know that it's not, I carry the cigar, right? Obviously, I believe in it. It's not that the cigar itself is inferior in any way, but I know what your tastes are, whether in the broad sense or what you're looking for in this moment. Mm-hmm. And for me to be able to say to you, you probably don't want to try that now or maybe ever based on your preferences. That's a trust relationship, right? Like you said, I'm not
what if
selling
it's like you're using reverse psychology on me? I'm like, he's telling me to not get this really good cigar that I think is good. Now I have to try it. It's only wasted $15 anyways.
The forbidden fruit, right? That's not for you. And then you're like, okay, I'll take 3.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's a great point too, is being able to step back and say, well, if you only smoke mild cigars, I'm not going to give you I'm not going to give you the base of Maduro because I don't want you to be disappointed in my product because you're expecting something else. We've had that experience before at an event that we did. The guy comes in and he says, this was actually before we had the Maduro. He says, I like really strong full body cigars. And I said, the base of Habano is not for you. When we have the Maduro, it's going to be more full body. Then, I'll come to you and say, hey, try this. Because I don't want him to have a bad experience with my product and then not trust me. And then same thing with people that work in the retail space. They might like that cigar. It might be really good. But if you're coming in looking for something else, it's not wise to recommend them maybe that cigar. Find them something else that they would like.
Yeah, for sure. For sure.
Any final thoughts, final insights?
First off, thank you. Thank you guys. In just the few months that we've gotten to know each other, I really appreciate what you're doing. Not only seeing you in the lounge, in all the different facets, coming in and using the space as a workspace, but engaging with the consumers and also being a local brand representative. But, like we talk about, having this digital space where you are actively engaging new consumers. It's a wonderful thing for the business. And then also to do the event with us and to showcase here and invite me onto the podcast. I'm really grateful. It's really nice to spend this time with you, and to have this very organic development of relationship, like everything that we talked about. You know what I mean? We started just having a cigar and a conversation. For the topic, I'm very excited for what the industry looks like right now, and where I think it's going. I think it's very easy over the last decade to be a little disheartened with the battles that we've had with the FDA and all the rest of those other things. But to see the industry, the culture, and the consumer base kind of rally around all that, and from my perspective, to be really cultivating new people who enjoy cigars, I think is the first time in a long time that's really happened. So I'm excited for the future. And here at Blend and Barrel, I get to be kind of in the state that I've always called home, but in a new form of it, in this realm, like you said, detached from Tampa and Miami, but Orlando really has its own cigar scene that's kind of a mix of the two. So yeah, no, everything is wonderful.
Thank you. Yeah, I appreciate the cigars as well. I mean,
yeah, this is great.
Yeah, like you said,
yeah.
You can really find any cigar you want if you really want to. You'll pay the money for it, whatever. But the one thing you really can't get is time. You have to kind of rely on someone else as yourself who has kept the cigar preserved for so long. So I really appreciate the fact that you gave us these cigars.
It's my pleasure. I'm glad you enjoyed them. And this is also, it was conscious in that, we're in this moment. We've been in this period for probably like a decade where companies and consumers are in this mode of what's new. I want to post on Instagram the new thing, the hot thing. We're following trends. So very consciously, I was like, let me grab a cigar that I know is, first off, in your preference, in your palate range, but also something that is a very storied brand. This heritage was still produced at a time where Henke was deeply involved in the Davidoff factory. So you have that lineage. But the Avo heritage is often overlooked. So I love that kind of, and I talk about this too in the humidor and with our consumers, is when you say what's new, my follow-up question is, well, you've smoked everything in this room? Because whether it's got here 6 months ago or it's 10 years old, it might be new to you.
That's true.
So I was glad that you enjoyed it. That was fun.
No, of course. Thank you. So thank you guys for tuning in to another episode of the Cigar Guys podcast. Again, if you're visiting or if you live here locally, definitely come check out Blend and Barrel. Come meet Shiah. Come hang out with us while we're here and enjoy some really good cigars. They have a great selection of not just cigars, but liquor and alcohol as well. Full bar. Again, great place to hang out. So definitely check out Blend and Barrel. But until then, we'll see you next time. Take care.
We hope you enjoyed this episode of the Cigar Guys podcast. Make sure you subscribe and hit that notification bell so you can stay up to date with all the latest episodes. Looking for short form content? Check out all our social media accounts in the description below.